Welcome to the virtual happy half hour for March 12th. We will be getting started in just a moment. And as we wait for people to join the Zoom, just a reminder that today's session will be recorded and sent out later today. All right, let's get started. And again, welcome to the virtual happy half hour for March 12th, 2021. We are offering up ourselves as a real live COVID case study this week. We've been talking for the last year, basically giving you all ideas and recommendations and strategies for adapting to this crazy change that we've been going through for the last year. And we've had to live that experience ourselves. And so we are giving you a peek inside the kimono, so to speak, and letting you know how we've applied our own advice. I'm excited, as always, to be joined by Russ Scherer, our Director of Sales Strategy Effectiveness from California. Welcome, Russ.
Thanks, Michelle. It's good to be with you again. I can't believe we've been doing these for a year.
Exactly.
Hard to believe we've been both put away and locked down like this. So we are excited to be able to share with you today some of the things that we've done at the Brooks Group. We're going to talk about ideas that we've passed along, and then even how those have evolved over time as this has gone on. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing to prepare for what appears to be the soon reopening of business across the country. I know some of you are in areas that are totally reopened, and some of you are in more restricted places still. So we'll cover all of those. Our outline for today really is to look at how COVID has affected sales teams from the data. What's the industry telling us that's happening? And then we're going to look at three areas of our own changes. How have we changed our tools? How have we changed the products that we offer? And then how do we engage with our prospects and customers in a maybe different way than we did before the pandemic? So we'll cover all of those. And our sponsor today is the Virtual Sales Bootcamp, Virtual Selling Bootcamp, excuse me. If your team or you are looking for ways to be able to better engage virtually, which means not in person, whether that's figuring out how to do better emails or using text as a part of the selling mechanism, being able to use social media, or even being able to use video tools like Zoom or Teams, this is the right place for you to learn. We'll talk some more about that in just a minute. But before we get to that, Michelle, what data have you found in terms of how COVID over the last 12 months has changed our sales teams?
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, so as Russ indicated, he's going to be talking a lot more about how we specifically here at the Brooks Group have changed. But let's take a step back and talk about how sales teams in general have changed over the past year, and maybe even what the next level of change looks like moving forward. So I found a study. This was with the Sales Management Association. They did some research around the impact of the pandemic on sales strategy, and they looked at roughly 67 firms, and this was released in late October. Initially, they did indicate that 52% of the organizations that they surveyed had experienced significant to extreme sales organization change in the era of COVID. I'm sure many of us, Russ and I included, we can all relate to that extreme level of change. Another 28% experienced some level of change, and 20% actually had little to no change. So let's look at what those changes were. And you'll look at this graph here, the top 5 areas that organizations in this study made change, significant to some change. So sales process was number 1, value proposition number 2, job role changes, training, and offering. Those were the top 5. And if you look at the bottom, incentives and pay and pricing, and actually target markets and segments were among the least significant change. I do want to point out that the Sales Management Association defines sales process as the methods, activities, and modes that sellers use when selling their products and services. So Think about the increase in digitization, think about how you qualify customers moving through the process who might be involved in those stages. And then they define sales methodology, which is a little bit further down the list, as the messages and tactics at different stages of the sales process. So interestingly, most organizations experience more change in their process than in their actual methodology and the messaging and tactics. I think that though this is very much consistent with a lot of the data and trends that we've been presenting over the last year. We know that organizations have had to really rethink their value proposition. What resonates with customers, right? What benefit is your customer going to get from your offering in the time of COVID? We've seen things like increased need for ROI. How do you help organizations manage risk? So these types of things, these messages have had to evolve. We know job roles have changed with the onset of virtual selling, and clearly organizations have needed training, and they've really needed to rethink their offerings. So those are really the top 5 areas of change.
It's interesting to note, just from looking at that graph, that over 50% of organizations, of sales organizations, have been touched by one of those top 3 or 4 changes. And more than even at the bottom, you're looking at nearly a third of the organizations have been touched. So it's not like just it's a small percentage. This is a third to a half.
Right. I mean, I think that's really the degree of change and also the effectiveness, which we're going to talk about here in just a second, has, I think, been unprecedented. The amount of change, and I've seen this with the organizations that I know that I've been working with. I know you've seen it as well, Russ. It's the degree of change, it's the speed of change, and how it's implemented and how teams are having to cope with that moving forward. And as we look at how effective these changes have been, again, you look at the top 5, sales process, fairly effective. And you'll notice nobody was over 50% in effectiveness in terms of being able to really implement these changes effectively into a level of success. But sales process, offering, value proposition, fairly successful. Sales methodology and training. Organizations have not been able to get get really a handle on incentives and pay, and we saw that ourselves in our research last year. Performance objectives and target markets and segments are really the lowest. So again, a lot of change, somewhat effective, I would say, in how those changes were implemented, but nobody really over 50% in their effectiveness. So again, as Russ said, a big trend across organizations and how they're adapting to this unique environment. And then this may seem somewhat a no-brainer or self-explanatory, but the adaptable organizations outperform their peers. So the organizations that rated themselves as most effective in these areas of change have projected performance over the next 12 months that's much higher than their peers relative to ineffective and somewhat effective levels of change. So they're actually close to meeting their objectives for a 12-month period. So, your ability to identify change and then implement it effectively has a huge impact on the organization. And finally, in this same study, they looked at critical capabilities for effective change. So in other words, what are the most important elements for these types of changes, whether it's sales process, methodology, changes to your value proposition, your offerings, et cetera? What's most important in contributing to the success of those changes? And there were several components, things like messaging from leadership, preparation for change, clear direction for the sales team, a good technology infrastructure, coaching support, training, and development. So we know that those were identified as being very, very important. But again, they looked at the effectiveness of change. And there were 2 critical capabilities that really came out as most important for success. And that's an adaptable and change-ready sales force and salesperson training and development. And what they found was that these 2 elements were in the top half of importance for effective change, but they were in the bottom half in terms of effectiveness. So if you're evaluating the success of your change initiatives in our audience today, or you're considering some changes moving forward, really think about how important it is to prepare your team effectively for those changes, and then effectively train them on those changes as well. So you've got to really get that mindset, help them wrap their minds around change, and then train them to be effective moving forward.
We've talked about that in the past, that muscle memory will go back to the way it was in February 2020 or January 2020. If you're not already starting to think about how is life going to be different. And there's a great piece I heard yesterday morning on the radio that there won't be an end of COVID like our graduation date from high school. COVID will have this long tail on it that's going to slowly change over time. And so therefore we've got to, just as we changed our teams a year ago to go 100% virtual, we've got to get them used to this new mix. And so I think those are both great points.
Yeah, and I love that point about a graduation date. If only it was, right, where you could just say we've crossed the threshold and it's over.
Exactly.
But organizations have changed at incredible speeds over the last year, and with varying levels of success. So it's really important to think through what that messaging is going to be. How do we train and really reinforce what we're looking for moving forward? And this same study indicated that 76% of organizations still expect additional change, Russ, over the next 6 months. So much like what you're saying, it's not going to be a cutoff date. And those are most likely to be in the areas of customer segmentation, performance objectives, training, offering, staffing, incentive pay. So some of those areas at the bottom of those graphs are now going to be coming to the forefront moving forward.
We posted a new blog post on our website yesterday about sort of what's going to happen as the expected demand over the second half of 2021 picks up, and some good thoughts there if you want to go to the website and look at it in terms of how are you preparing your team for that, and how do you get ready for sort of this hopefully, as we all think, a snapback of demand kind of from where we were 13, 14 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. And getting ready, I think, is the key. I don't think we felt like we had a lot of getting ready time this time last year. It was just sort of like, boom, you're there. So at least maybe we've got a little bit more of a ramp into the post-COVID era. So as Russ indicated at the beginning of our session, we are sponsored by the Virtual Bootcamp. And so I would say this falls into the sales methodology category of the changes that we were talking about. So if you are looking for an option for your team to really hone the messaging, the tactics of virtual selling, then I would really encourage you to consider a virtual bootcamp. It is 4 sessions of just the nuts and bolts tactical strategies and tactics that you need to sell virtually around questioning. How do you present a recommendation? Structuring emails and using video, social media, texting, understanding what medium to use at what time. So if you are interested in learning more about our virtual bootcamp, please feel free to email us at contact@thebrooksgroup.com, and producer Rich is going to put that information in the chat box. And we are taking registrations now, and registration for our next session ends on March 22nd. So please take a look at that and sign up if you're interested. Russ, tell us about the Brooks Group.
Well, so here's a series of tools. Some of these were being used before a year ago, but they changed either importance or emphasis. The first couple are kind of how we stayed connected internally. And we had been playing with Slack and had some channels, but it became sort of a core communications mechanism for us as we distributed to different parts remotely. It was a way for us to kind of simulate the kind of conversations you have when you drop by people's offices. So we, for example, set up a daily sales information channel. What were the sales teams hearing from people? And again, in our business, we were seeing a lot of cancellation of in-person training, it being moved to virtual training. It gave us a chance to kind of read the market and the industry almost in real time. Also a lot of ability to do sort of one-on-one conversations, the kind of things you used to do in a stop at somebody's desk or drop by their office. And then we even posted a water cooler channel, which was one of the most popular for people just posting something funny they'd read or something they wanted to share with the rest of the group. And it became a way to kind of start your day with a laugh, if you will, in a time that didn't have a lot of humor. A second one that is just now starting to roll out. Folks, but we saw this expansion of the programs we offered, and then some of those were being delivered much quicker. We needed better communication, and especially as more and more of the team went remotely. So we're using, just trying to roll out something called Monday.com. It's a common billboard or for our bulletin board for us to be able to look at everything we need to see. And it's a way for us to keep all of the dates, all the information, all there together. I understand I just had a little bit of a video problem, so I apologize for that. And then second part was, how did we change the way we stayed connected with our customers? And the number one tool that we use for that really is HubSpot. It's especially valuable for us, what we call top of the funnel kind of activity, where we can work with prospects and those people that we have on what we call nurturing lists, the ones that have expressed an interest but aren't quite ready to move forward with training with the Brooks Group. Right after the pandemic hit, email was a great tool. And so we used it to be able to deliver different messages, to be able to connect. Since then, email sort of got overwhelming to a lot of folks. And so we backed off in some of our frequencies, changed some of the messages that we're delivering. And we also work with multiple lists, so we can make sure that we're doing a much better job of segmenting and targeting what we want to ask and deliver to our customers where possible. And then the next piece is around sort of our sales leadership forums. They were a group that we put together for just sales leaders who wanted a chance to talk to each other. And their curiosity was, what are my peers doing and what can I learn from them? And so these group sort of expanded quickly. We put them together, I think in about 2 weeks, got up to where we had, I think at one point, over 100 different sales leaders in these groups. As things started to open up back in the summer and people got more comfortable, we recognized that and started to slowly bring those groups back together again and shut them down. But it was a kind of an immediate response to our customers and what they needed. And we've gotten a lot of people who've responded very well to that. If you're not an organization who spends a lot of time looking for new mail lists or building your mail list, I want to really encourage you. One of the last companies I was at produced a very good newsletter. And so we worked hard, myself and one of the other individuals really kind of ran the list to build it. And over the course of 12 months, we grew it by about a 250%. And they were quality names, not just names, but quality names. And so we were able to deliver a monthly newsletter. We could track who opened it. We could track what information they were reading. We even set up eventually the ability to those people who got the email but didn't open it, we'd resend it in about a week and got about another 5% open rate. So there's a lot of tools you can use either in HubSpot or some of the mailing list managers to both stay connected with your customers and to reach out to new prospects. We use a tool electronically called Outreach, which is used for sales engagement. It's a way in which we manage the sequence. And so if you've reached out to the Brooks Group and we haven't been able to talk yet, you might get an email from us. You might see something, a request to join us on social media. Maybe there'll be some voice messages. Outreach is able to deliver all of those different communication mechanisms, as well as provide a workshop or a dashboard for our sales team for them to go in and look every day based on the leads that are in their funnel. Who should they contact and when? What kind of mechanism should do that? Salesforce.com is our CRM. We went through though and did the classic, all right, how do we really use it? We cleaned up the data that was in it from years and years and years of using it, but not necessarily having everything labeled correctly. We simplified our workflow and cut down on some of the information that we managed and tracked for different customers. And then really got focused on the idea of Salesforce needs to be our reporting tool. And this has taken us a while. We were, like a lot of companies, taking information from Salesforce, putting it in that great sales reporting tool called Excel, and then generating all sorts of graphs and spreadsheets. And we'd come to a meeting and everyone would have a different spreadsheet that had a slightly different number on it. So we've committed to making sure that we generate our reports out of one spot. Yes, if you print them, they may be out of date, but if we're looking online, all the information is going to be consistent. And that's a program we're just kind of wrapping up now, even though we're 12 months into the pandemic. As a part of that, we looked at tighter metrics. We really looked sort of at how many new contacts are we getting? How many of those turned into leads? What kind of size did that happen to change our funnel? Did it grow? And if it grew by how many, both dollars and programs? And that's reviewed by our leadership and management team every single day. We were tracking some of those, but we reset some of the metrics and began to watch them at a much closer level with the pandemic. And then the last thing we've done is we have increased our use of pay-per-click advertising. That's the kind of thing you see on Google. If you type in sales training, chances are the Brooks Group is going to pop towards the top. We have found that it is one of the ways in which sales leaders who say, boy, I need training, will just go online and type in sales training and boom, that's where we are. That's the first thought they think about. And it's Google where a lot of those conversations start. So we have done that. We are very fortunate in that we annually win usually one of the top sales training company awards from a couple of the key training magazines. And that is a place where people start and then they'll drive their way back to find us. So as you start to think about how do you find prospects, again, Google is a great way to do that. And while there may be other mechanisms that will eventually replace it, it's still the winner today. So how did our products change? I like to tell people that, when your business plan is built around putting people on airplanes, flying them somewhere, putting them in a room for 2 days, and then flying them back home, that didn't work very well in March and April of 2020. It doesn't work very well today even. And so we became 100% virtual sort of overnight. What were days became multiple hour sessions. We rolled some of our content into micro learning right after everything got shut down. People said, I want to train my team, but I don't have 2 hours. I don't have 6 hours or 12 hours. And so we created these like 10 or 15 minute just refresher programs that we were able to offer companies. And then what we did was we took everything we were learning and we built it into a best practices playbook. And that playbook is something that continually got updated as we learned new things, as the tools got better for us to use. We wanted to always stay on top of our game in terms of that. And we, as a result of that, focused on not just moving a classroom online, but adding things like, how do you have the right kind of games? How do you drive engagement through breakout rooms and getting people to be involved in that? We're very proud of the fact that by following those practices, retraining our facilitators, making sure we had the optimized length of sessions, adding electronic producers like producer Rich is doing here, all of those things we believe not only took us to the beginning and top of the pack for online training, but we were recently named the best virtual training company from Investopia of all of the companies that are out there. We're very excited about that, but we know that that's a continual learning piece. So I guess the question for you is, how are your products changing in these days of virtual? Whether it's the core content, which for us hasn't changed that much, it's been added to with some of the virtual tools, but it's the delivery mechanism. Our channel or our go-to-market strategy has definitely changed in that regard. So I'd ask that. And then second of all, how does it get reshaped by our customers? We still are being looked at as people who drive value based on the ability to move the needle. We want our customers to see more sales success. And as a part of that, what we found is that virtual selling isn't that different. You still need to know how to handle objections. You still need to be able to listen. You still need to be able to make sure you're connecting between what the customer's needs are and what it is that you're offering. And what we found was when you went online, a lot of people said, I just need a skill. Just tell me how to close or tell me how to negotiate. And the answer from all of that was, everybody wants a shortcut. They want a silver bullet, if you will, that says, boy, if I just stand on my head, more people are going to close business with me. And so what we found as we worked through that was, there does need to be some additional skills training, but there also needs to be just some work around fundamentals and make it in a way that that the time increment is going to fit with the customer. So we do these 2-hour sessions, which allows the reps to go out and practice it between sessions, which really helps with their retention and their ability to learn. And we also did some innovation. We started thinking about how our customers learn and the right way for them to be able to retain and really make differences. This is kind of a teaser, but we have a new program that we're right now piloting called Brooks OS that is going to be, we think, really exciting and really impactful, because it's going to take everything we've been learning about how people learn and about what moves the needle and about how to use tools electronically and bring those together in a way that will have, we think, much more significant impact on the sales teams as they learn and grow. And then the last piece, how do we engage with our customers? We talked a little bit about the technology, but just kind of, using the right tool has been really important. We have a list that we developed as a part of our virtual playbook in terms of what we needed for communication. And to this day, we believe that Zoom is still the best for training because of the evaluation matrix that we built. But we continually, and producer Rich is a part of this, we benchmark 6 or 7 platforms almost on a monthly basis to see how they've evolved and how they've gotten better. Microsoft Teams, for example, has evolved. We don't think it's quite to Zoom, but it's better for training than it was in the past. WebEx or GoToMeeting, all of those things have attributes. We're always looking at that. So how are we making sure that we're always using the best tool to provide the best situations for our customers? And then one of the things that we've really done a lot of lately is this rethinking about the idea of video email. Soapbox, Vidyard. There's an app that isn't very highly rated, but a lot of people are using it, called Boom Boom. All of those things are ways in which messages can be delivered, not just in words anymore, but our culture increasingly responds to video. And so we like to be able to use that. This is a mock-up of Lauren, one of the folks on our team. You click on it, you can deliver the message of what she has learned. And we're using those both early on in the prospecting phase, we're using them in the selling phases, and then we're using them as part of our closing capabilities as well. We've also restructured some of our sales teams. There were more individual work. We've restructured into selling teams. We've talked about that, the need for people to support each other. We're bringing, we used to have sort of hunter and farmer teams. They had more complicated names than that, but most people recognize, yes, there were hunters and yes, there were farmers. Now we're putting those together on teams to really be able to handle the customer, not just through the initial engagement, but long-term. We're bringing our subject matter experts into the selling conversation earlier, being able to share what we're learning, and also being able to talk and understand what are the real challenges and how then can we shape the training to make that. And we're also trying to do some work around just customer issue diagnosis. Michelle and the Sales Performance Research Center have put together some new tools for diagnostics to understand how aligned are sales organizations. All of those things being done to help us more address the real key issues that our customers are coming to us with. They'll come and they'll say, help me, I want to be more effective. And sometimes we need to work with them to understand what that really looks like. And then finally, from a sales process perspective, this is the first thing that Michelle said most companies changed. I don't know why I put it last. We should have coordinated better. But I'd say 3 things. One, we've simplified our customer documents. We cleaned up our terms and conditions, our letters of acceptance, so that they're easier to read. They have all the information that customers need. We've simplified some of the terms so that they can be reviewed very quickly and move forward. We've tightened the way in which we look at deals in the end of our funnel. ACT is the apply, convince, and tie it up stages. And we're looking, it used to be the middle of the month, we would move something into the next month. Now we're looking maybe even a little deeper than that, maybe the middle of the second week of the month to see if a deal has to move. We're also looking at how can we continue the selling conversation while our customer is going through the internal conversation. And then last of all, we built a major opportunities process that allows us for those really big opportunities to come in to alert every resource in the company that we want to be ready to move. And so we have the ability to more quickly, our sales team does, to go to people and ask for help. And those are just some of the changes, but I think those are the most significant changes that we have seen. that probably drives some questions. It probably has some questions both in terms of either how do we do this, or maybe the alternate question is, what would that look like in my organization? We'd love to answer those for you now. So if you have some questions, please go ahead and either chat us or use the Q&A function, and we'll be glad to answer those.
You know, Russ, I think just one thing to point out, and you alluded to this throughout your talk, but we did do some significant retraining within the organization, particularly around how we deliver, how our facilitators manage in a virtual setting. It's a completely different skill set, and when you think about change management in particular, that's an important piece. So it's not only what the change is, but making sure that the team is equipped to handle that change. That's
a great point, Michelle. I'd say the other thing I get when I talk to customers is they'll say, I understand there's all these technical tools, but I don't have capacity. My guys aren't very technical. What do I do? And I'm not saying you should adopt all the same tools we do, but there's so much leverage to be gained in implementing a tool well. And so my encouragement is always, start one place. Maybe it's just mailing list management software, which can be managed by one person and kind of used by one person, or find areas where there is some slowness or let's call it clunkiness in the way in which you work with your customers. And if you can find a way to automate that, you're going to just get a lot of leverage out of it. So don't feel like you have to implement everything. Just kind of take it slowly. You saw we don't have a very big IT team at the Brooks Group, and so that's why some of these things like Salesforce or Monday have taken us a little longer to roll out than we wanted. So go from here. The first thing I do is think about your communication strategies. What are you doing internally and towards customers? How do you tighten that up? How do you not overwhelm your customers? And at the same time, how do you give them the information they need to know to be able to move forward, as well as your own internal teams? How has prospecting changed for you? And do you need to continue to do some of these things? I don't know how soon it's going to be until trade shows are going to be back. That's a really big way for people to generate leads. Lunch and learns. How long before I can bring lunch in and sit in a room full of people and eat lunch together? And so there is some need to evolve kind of the way in which we find leads. The other question I think to ask is, what's going to stay changed in your business model? We changed a lot in terms of how we sold as we went into the pandemic. Now, what's going to stay that way, or what's going to be consistent with that as we come out of this? And if you think a year from now, some of these things that we've done differently, we're probably going to want to keep our hands on. How are our customers' needs changing? Because they're also going through some of this. Ask yourself the question, is it really a technology? Is it a structure? Is it a process? Is it a part of all three? Which parts need to be improved? Where do I need to do education and training for my teams to help them become better? And I would say the biggest non-change that we've made as an organization is that we have always appreciated our clients and our customers, but we do that even more now than ever before. We've walked alongside them to upskill teams, and they've trusted us to help us continue their success. And we really appreciate that. So if you're listening today and you're a customer of ours, express both mine and Michelle's, as well as the whole Brooks Group team, appreciation for how you have continued to partner with us, because we know sales is the lifeblood of every organization. Next time, I'm excited about this one. We're going to talk about what comes beyond thought leadership. And we're big on thought leadership. We're big on helping to educate your customers. There's some great data out there about what large percentage of customers want to be educated along the way in a sale. But sometimes we can be overwhelmed. And how do we start to parse between just more information and the right information? And that's what we'll look at on the 26th.
Thank you all for joining us, and we are excited to see you again in 2 weeks. For more information on virtual bootcamp, please email contact@thebrooksgroup.com, and we will see you next time.
All right.